For a brief moment, Quinn had forgotten about a world with abilities. A world where people didn't try to get up on one another, just for the sake of what? Pride. He looked down and could see the 2 blades stuck in his stomach, blood dripping off the blades. Fei had let go of the blades and took a step back, with his mouth wide open, acting like everything that had happened was an accident. But Quinn wasn't buying it, and he had a good idea what had just happened. As he looked around, he managed to catch a smile on Brandon's face. Quinn then grabbed the hilt of the 2 blades and, using his strength, snapped the ends off. With the other half of the blade still in his stomach, he started to walk towards Fei. "So, you want to play games then?" Quinn said. "Then let's play some games. You've taken some of my blood, so it's only right that I take some of yours." As Fei heard these words, he couldn't help but move back away from Quinn. Something was different, the look in his eyes. "Why is my body shaking? He's only a level 1 user, calm down." Then, when Quinn was only a few feet away, he swung his clawed hand out. Blood swelled. But before Quinn could finish casting his skill, his hand was knocked away by a blade. "Enough. Stop now," Leo said, as he pointed his blade towards Quinn. "2 wrongs do not make a right. And you two, don't think your plan went unnoticed. I will not have students who can't follow the rules in my class. You can leave your weapons here, and you are banned from any more combat classes in the weapon hall." Just then, 2 military men had appeared out of nowhere, standing by Quinn's side. "Take him to the doctor's office and make sure he gets treated," Leo said. "Wait," Layla shouted. "Maybe I should go with him. Make sure he is okay." "He's a strong boy. Worry not, young lady. He can take care of himself." Although Layla was worried about Quinn being hurt, that wasn't her main concern. It looked like, from the wounds on Quinn's body, that he had lost a lot of blood. Even if vampires could heal at supernatural speeds, that energy had to come from somewhere and would soon need to be replaced. After grabbing Quinn by both of his arms, after a few seconds, Quinn was transported just outside the doctor's office. "Please get some rest once you have healed up," one of the men said before teleporting away once again. What a handy ability to have. After checking that the men had disappeared, Quinn decided to head to the closest bathroom on the same floor. Nearly all the students were in combat classes at the moment, so the halls were empty. The reason why Quinn had decided to head to the bathroom rather than to the doctor's office was that he could already feel his body was healing up. His status screen also confirmed that fact. HP, 12 of 20. Just like before, as soon as Quinn was out of combat, his body was starting to heal at an incredibly fast rate. Quinn looked down, and it looked like his body had healed most of the wounds. However, it wasn't able to heal the area where the blades were stuck. This is going to hurt. Luckily, Quinn still had his gauntlets on, so he didn't have to grab the blades with his bare hands. 1, 2, 3. He then pulled the blades out as fast as he could in one action. The pain was quick and sharp, and he did everything he could to hold in his screams. Finally, the wounds around his stomach were slowly starting to heal, until suddenly, he received some new messages. Your hunger grows. Your hunger grows. HP, 15 of 20. You will no longer heal. Your HP will continue to decrease by 1 until human blood has been consumed. Quinn looked at the message and was trying to figure out what had happened. When Quinn did his tests, he found out that his body would need to consume blood once every 2 days. But this message had come up even though Quinn had only consumed Layla's blood this morning. It hadn't reached the time limit yet. Then Quinn thought back to how the blood was able to heal his health. If it worked the same way, then that meant his body was using blood as energy to heal himself. Once this energy had run out inside his body, he would no longer be able to heal, and he would once again have to consume blood. Quinn felt a hunger in his stomach and started to look at himself in the mirror. His clothes were all bloody, and he was in slight pain, but he still cracked a smile. That's when Quinn also noticed that his top 2 teeth had grown slightly. It was different from last time when he had panicked. This time, he felt calm. He was used to taking blood, and he already knew who his next targets were going to be tonight. The hunger pangs were bearable this time, perhaps because Quinn wasn't in a critical condition. After heading back to his dorm room, Quinn threw his bloody clothes on the floor and changed his clothes out with a different uniform. While Quinn was busy getting changed, he heard the sound of 2 students talking as they walked down the corridor. Why did I get kicked out? You were the only one who used an ability. Fei complained. Hey, you were fine with the plan when I told you about it earlier. Why are you getting so annoyed about it now? Brandon said. You were the one who dragged me into it all because you lost to a level 1. Embarrassing. Fei chuckled. Just then, Brandon slammed Fei up against the corridor wall and held him by his collar. Do I need to remind you that I'm a higher level than you, Fei? Or do we have to fight so you can learn your place? Fei said nothing until Brandon eventually let go of his collar. That's when Fei decided to walk off in the opposite direction away from the dorm rooms. I thought we were friends, Brandon, not just some lackey you control because I'm a lower level than you. Then, as Brandon entered his dorm room, he slammed the door behind him. Oh, a lover's quarrel, huh? Excellent, Quinn said, as he grabbed his bag and headed out to follow Fei. The combat classes had finished, and the sun was starting to set. With that, a rush of students was now heading back to their dorm rooms, and that included Peter and Vorden. As the two of them entered the room, Vorden's eyes widened as he spotted something. What the? Are these Quinn's clothes? Peter said as he lifted them off the ground. They're covered in blood. Did he get hurt during training? Vorden's whole body was shaking as he saw the blood. What happened to him? Vorden thought. Did the second years target him too, or did something happen in training? I told you we should have kept an eye on him. We should have killed those second years when we had the chance. Stop it, Vorden said out loud. Huh? Vorden, are you okay? Peter asked. But without saying anything else, Vorden opened the door to search for Quinn. But as he did, Layla stood there with her hand by the door, as if she was just about to knock. Oh, is Quinn here? Layla said, but in the next second, Vorden grabbed Layla by the hand, dragging her in and slamming the door behind her. Vorden then immediately pushed Layla up by the door and pressed his forearm against her neck. Tell me what happened to Quinn now. What the hell's wrong with you? Layla managed to groan out. Hey, Vorden, I think you're hurting her, Peter said quietly. Vorden suddenly started pressing against her throat even harder. Layla was struggling with all her might to get air, and if she didn't do anything soon, she was worried she might pass out. The little one didn't like you, and the other one told me not to get involved. But in the end, I'm always the one who has to deal with things, Vorden said. Layla's face started to turn a bright red. The veins on her neck were popping, threatening to explode as she struggled to breathe. Hey, seriously, Vorden, you're going too far, Peter shouted. Shut up, Vorden shouted as he turned to look at Peter. My name is not Vorden either. That's when Layla saw her opportunity. The grip around her neck loosened a little as Vorden was distracted. She reached down into her quiver that was attached to her waist and pulled out one of her arrows, then proceeded to stab the arrow into the top part of Vorden's thigh. Ah! Vorden cried as he flinched and let go of Layla. Layla then quickly pulled out another arrow with her telekinesis ability and hovered it right in front of Vorden's face. Don't you dare move, you psycho, said Layla. I swear if you do, I will not hesitate to shove this arrow right in your head. Peter started to panic at the situation that was happening in front of him. There was no way he could jump in the middle of these two. He was too scared of getting hurt himself. I don't even know why Quinn asked me to look out for you. If you ask me, he's better off without someone like you. Wait, Quinn really said that, Vorden said in a gentle tone. Look, I'm sorry about what just happened, but I just want to know what happened to Quinn. As Vorden said these words, his eyebrows were slightly twitching. His personality had taken a complete 180, and Layla didn't know what to make of it. For some reason, something was telling her that this boy was dangerous, and if she could, she would have nothing to do with him. But right now, she needed to find Quinn, who knew if he was going on another rampage right now. She was the only one who knew Quinn's secret, and Quinn needed her. It was just an accident at the combat classes today, said Layla. He wasn't at the medical bay, so I thought he was in his room, but it looks like he already left. I wouldn't worry about it. Layla then recalled her arrow back into her quiver and walked out of the room in a rush. Then, as soon as she left, Vorden lifted the arrow out of his leg with the copied telekinesis ability and threw the arrow to one side. Hey, are you all right, man? You kinda acting a little strange there, Peter asked. Yeah, I'm fine, Vorden said. She's lying to you. Did you see how she rushed off like that? Something's up, let's follow her. Or we could try asking the other students who were in the same combat classes as Quinn. They might be able to tell us who did this to him. Oh, payback. I like it. And then, on the way back, maybe that pretty girl can get into an accident. No, I told you she's just Quinn's friend. Can't you see? She's just as worried about Quinn as we are. She's a good person. Well, I don't like her. I agree. We should get rid of her. Vorden, are you okay? Peter asked again. You've been standing there looking at the floor for a while now. Huh? Oh yeah, I just need to head off to the doctor's office to get this wound checked out on my leg. I'll be back when I can, Vorden said as he left the room and headed outside. Quinn had been following Fei from a safe distance for a while now, but it didn't look like he was heading out of the school, and time was running out. HP, 12 of 20. If he lost any more health, he would have to go search for Layla and find his target another time. However, Quinn felt like he would never have an opportunity as good as this one again. Very rarely was there a time when people would be on their own, and especially one that Quinn had a grudge against. That's when Fei started to head up the stairs and eventually went up to the school roof door. After reaching the closed door, Quinn quickly moved and opened the door ever so slightly and started to peek through. Quinn glances around the rooftop, feeling happy for his luck. Fei was the only person he could see up there. Lady Luck is on my side today. Quinn then took the mask out of his bag and put it on his face. Before he moved onto the rooftop, he used a rag of ripped cloth from his old uniform and wrapped it around his wrist to hide his power level. There weren't many other level 1 users who used gauntlets in the whole school. If Fei were to see his power level on his wristwatch, it would be a dead giveaway. As soon as Quinn opened the door, he knew the metal creaking sound would notify Fei that someone else was here. He needed to do everything as quickly as possible. Ready and go. Quinn then pushed open the door and ran over to where Fei was in an instant. And as soon as Fei turned around, he could see red bloodlines in the shape of a claw coming out from a mysterious masked man. What the? Fei was too slow to react, and all he could do was lift his hand, but the blow was extremely powerful. When the red lines touched his skin, it immediately caused blood to be drawn. It felt like 5 sharp knives were cutting him at the same time. Not only that, but the force was so strong that it managed to throw Fei into the air. With his 12 strength and an extra 3 from the gauntlets, Quinn now had a total of 15 strength, and then the gauntlets also increased his attack power by 5%, making the attack far stronger than Quinn had predicted. Fei continued to fly into the air until his body hit the back of the gated fence. He then collapsed on the floor and passed out. HP, 11 of 20. Fei didn't even have the chance to use his ability to fight back. It was over in an instant. Blood started to drip from his arms and began to create a small puddle of blood, and before Quinn realized it, his teeth had grown into fangs. He slowly walked over to Fei and could feel his heart beating faster. The sweet fragrances were getting stronger, but Quinn didn't care about the blood that was on the floor. He was more interested in the single vein that he could see pulsating through Fei's neck. Quinn then lifted Fei slightly off the ground, and without even thinking about it, sank his fangs into Fei's neck. Quinn continued to drink Fei's blood until multiple notifications had appeared. HP, 20 of 20. The blood bank has been filled with 100 milliliters. An A-positive blood type has been consumed, plus 1 strength stat. 50 XP has been awarded. As Quinn was enjoying the last few drops of blood, he was startled by the sudden sound of the roof door being opened. Huh, so why did you want to meet me on this roof again? Loop said, rubbing his head. Then, when he looked up, he could see his friend covered in a pool of blood and a masked man with his teeth in his friend's neck. You monster, get off of him, Loop shouted. Inside one of the dorm rooms, Peter was waiting patiently for either Vorden or Quinn to come back. Usually, he would have gone off with Vorden, but the way Vorden had acted earlier had given him second thoughts. Even if Vorden was worried about Quinn, it made no sense for him to attack someone as soon as they opened the door. It was irrational, and not just that, but something stuck out to him at the time. The fact that Vorden said that Vorden wasn't his name. Peter wasn't exactly sure what he had meant by that. While Peter was busy worrying about the others, there was a sudden knock at the door. Are they back already? Peter said as he answered the door. When he opened the door, though, Peter immediately tried closing it, but a hand had come out and held the door open. Looks like he's not here, Momo said, looking around the room. It was Momo who was at the door, and behind him, he had two other second-year students. Peter didn't have a good feeling about this. He remembered the last time they had met and how he had given Vorden a warning. Not only that, but one of the second-year students standing behind Momo, Peter recognized as well. When Vorden was taken away to the assembly hall, one of the second-year students stood outside as a guard and wouldn't allow Peter to go past him. "Well, since you're the only one here, why don't you come with us?" Momo said, "We have some plans, and we think you might be the perfect person to help us." Peter felt like he had no choice but to listen. Momo was a level 6 user. He was stronger than any of the current first years, and he knew if he refused, he would become a target. Before, Vorden would have been able to help him, but not against these guys. They were too strong. Back on the school rooftop, Loop had just arrived to see his friend being held by what looked like some humanoid creature. Loop and Fei had agreed to meet on the roof to discuss what combat classes they should change to, now that he and Brandon had been kicked out. When Loop had arrived at the roof, he was surprised to see his friend lying there covered in blood. It was dark, so it was hard to see clearly, but as the creature held Fei in his arms and was biting into his neck, he could see glowing red eyes. Loop's mind instantly went thinking that it was some type of monster, but that's when he noticed that the so-called monster was wearing the same school uniform as them. An object started to grow out of Loop's body. It was a long, thin, white piece of bone that was the same size as a small sword. He pulled it out and threw it straight at Quinn. The flying sword bone flew straight at Quinn, but he knocked it away with his hand. Almost straight after, another piece of bone came at him, and behind it was Loop, running right towards him. In both of Loop's hands, he held two white bone swords and swung them down at Quinn. However, Quinn managed to grab onto both of the bone swords, stopping them in place, when Quinn tried to use his strength to break the bones. Surprisingly, nothing happened. That was because of the difference in ability level. Loop was a level 3 ability user. The special substance he was able to create out of his body was stronger than that of a basic tier beast weapon. As the two were held in place, Quinn realized his strength was greater and started to push Loop back. When Quinn started to push Loop back, he quickly took in a deep breath and blew out. Straight after, white bone spikes had appeared on his body all over. The bone spikes had managed to pierce Quinn's body in several different places, but luckily, he was able to avoid a blow to the head, and his hands were protected by the gauntlets. HP, 10 of 20. It was a strong attack, and it had hurt Quinn badly. Loop retracted the bone spikes into his body and was ready for the same attack again. As he breathed in, though, he could see Quinn swipe his hand like a claw. Loop ducked down, and instead of hitting him, the attack continued to go past, and the red lines eventually disappeared into nothing. "Let's see what you're hiding under that mask," Loop said as he stabbed one of the bone swords into Quinn's foot and then lifted another one at his face. However, Quinn decided to use all his strength to pull his foot from the sword. The bone sword stuck in his foot had ripped through his skin and torn through his shoes. His foot was now a mangled mess, but at least he was free. Doing his best to ignore the pain, Quinn jumped back a few feet to create distance between himself and Loop. This was bad. Not only did Loop have a strong ability, but unlike the people he had faced before, Loop was a good fighter. Quinn's sloppy skills weren't going to save him. Sure, he had more strength than his opponent, but that meant nothing if he couldn't hit him. HP, 5 of 20. Blood bank auto use. HP, 10 of 20. 90 millimeters left in the blood bank. In nearly an instant, Quinn's foot had healed. That's when he came up with a plan. HP, 20 of 20, 70 milliliters left in the blood bank. Quinn had used the rest of his blood bank to heal himself. With this, he would be able to bridge the gap in skill gap. As long as Quinn didn't take a fatal blow to the head, he was sure the system would heal him in time. This time, as Quinn rushed forward, he was no longer reserved about using his skills. He cast blood swipe after blood swipe, swinging his arms out. HP, 14 of 20. He had thrown a total of 6 blood swipes in rapid succession. They had come out fast, and all Loop could do was defend with his bones. The first few attacks had been blocked, but Loop could feel how powerful they were. HP, 8 of 20. After defending against the first 6 attacks, Loop thought he was done, but another 6 blood swipes came straight after, and his bone swords could no longer take it, and eventually snapped. HP, 18 of 20. 50 milliliters of blood left in the blood bank. Seeing Quinn continue to rush forward after him and his bone swords were broken, there was only one thing Loop could do. He took in another deep breath, and just when Quinn was close enough, he blew out, making bone spikes appear all over his body. However, Quinn wasn't slowing down and continued to run straight into the bone spikes, piercing several parts of his body. At the same time, he threw a punch out as hard as he could, sending Loop flying backwards. Then, to follow it up, Quinn released another barrage of blood swipes. HP, 5 of 20. HP, 10 of 20. 40 milliliters of blood left in the blood bank. As each of the blood swipes reached Loop's body, he stood his ground, reinforcing his body with bones, but not long after, he could no longer take any more punishment and collapsed to the ground. The opponent has been defeated. 50 XP has been received, 130 of 400 XP. The fight was a lot tougher than Quinn had thought. The only reason he was able to be as reckless as he was because of his blood bank. Quinn hated to think about how he would have fought if he didn't have the skill. Quinn then looked back at Fei, who was on the ground. It seemed like after being bitten by him, his targets would stay asleep for some time, which was a good thing. But now, it was time for him to feast on a new person. Quinn walked over to Loop's body and cast his inspect skill. Name, Loop Savvy. Ability, Bone Manipulation. HP, 1 of 25. Blood type, O negative. Finally, Quinn was going to find out what blood type O would give him. As Quinn looked at Loop's body on the ground, he noticed something strange. His current health was at 10 horsepower, and his body was naturally drawn to the blood. Whenever his health was low, he would get hungrier. That bit was a given, but something that also happened was his 2 canine teeth would start to grow longer. When they grow longer, it made it easier to pierce his victim's neck. Although Loop was bleeding, and Quinn was able to just drink from the open wound. This would only give him the extra stat point. He needed a good supply to also fill his blood bank. When inserting his teeth into his victim, it felt as though he instinctively knew the best location that would allow him to take as much blood as possible. Quinn lifted Loop's body from the ground. Only a few inches separated their faces. I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing that I'm finding it easier every time I do this. Quinn opened his mouth wildly, showing his teeth. He brought his mouth near Loop's neck and finally bit into his neck. A rush of blood entered his mouth. The blood tasted sweet. 20 of 20 hit points restored. O blood type has been consumed. 1 free stat point has been added. The blood bank has been filled. Quinn had a few guesses at what the O type would do, but this was better than he had imagined. Quinn quickly opened up his status screen and wanted to decide what to put the stat into straight away. Strength, 13 plus 3. Stamina, 12. Agility, 13. Quinn debated internally for a few minutes whether he should put his stat point into stamina or not. If he did, his stats would become well-rounded. But he thought about all the people who were strong in the world right now. They were usually a specialist in a certain area. A jack of all trades was something too weak in this day and age. Not only that, but Quinn felt like his growth would be quicker if he specialized in strength or agility. It would allow him to carry on beating weak opponents. Then, when he needed to, he could increase his stamina points at another time. It wasn't like Quinn was going to be facing an army of opponents anytime soon. Agility, 14. In the end, Quinn decided to stick to his original plan and add his stat points into agility. Quinn stood in place, looking at the duo, wondering what he should do. He was fairly certain that he had acted fast enough during his fight with Fei. He hoped that he hadn't seen anything that could give him away, but he couldn't say the same for Loop. When Quinn started to inspect Fei's body, he noticed that the bite marks on Fei's neck from Quinn had already disappeared. The doctors said the same thing happened with Layla, perhaps some type of effect from my ability. Quinn thought, well, that solves that problem, now what to do with you? Quinn pondered, looking at Loop's body. Although Quinn wore his mask, there was still the chance of someone figuring out it was him. After all, how many students used gauntlets as a weapon, and also would have a grudge to attack these two? However, Quinn wasn't that afraid of them finding out his real identity. After all, the school didn't really care if Quinn beat them half to death. Actions like this were commonplace at the academy. Quinn wasn't afraid that Loop might tell everyone what he had seen. Even if he did, no one would believe what he had said. Throughout the history of abilities, there had never been any reports of an ability where someone had to consume something to gain power. The power had always come from within, and with no markings on their neck to prove it, they would be treated as madmen without any type of proof. While Quinn was in the middle of his thoughts, he was startled when he heard the door start to open again. Quinn moved instantly at a lightning speed to try and flee the scene, but quickly stopped when he saw it was someone familiar opening the door. "There you are," Layla said. She then looked down and noticed the two bodies on the floor. "Quick, we have to get out of here. The guards will be here any second now." Quinn had taken too much time. He wasn't planning to take out two people. When a student was knocked out in the school or badly beaten, the wristwatch was able to ping their location to the school and inform them that they were hurt. Then, once this message was sent to them, the guards would pick the students up and take them to the hospital. No one knew how it worked, as it was amazing. The watch was able to tell how much health someone had. Rumors were spread that it was an original ability that created the watches. Quinn and Layla hastily ran down the stairs but stopped as they could hear the sound of footsteps coming in their direction. "Oh no, we can't go this way." Layla then started to look around the roof. "I have a plan. Grab me and let's jump." "Are you crazy?" Quinn said. "Even with my strength from this height, I would at least break my legs, and even if I can heal, I still feel pain." "Just trust me. Come on, I can use my ability." Quinn quickly lifted Layla with both arms despite his protest. With his strength, Layla was lighter than ever. He jumped onto the fence and looked down. The school was incredibly high. It was at least 4 stories. "I'm counting on you," Quinn muttered as he leapt off the building. As the duo was falling from the rooftop at an incredible speed, Layla closed her eyes and started to concentrate. Sweat started to form on her brows when suddenly the two of them started to decrease in speed. They eventually reached the ground. "Hey, that was pretty cool. You can fly?" Quinn asked, stunned. "No, my ability isn't that strong yet," Layla replied. "At most, I can only slow us down. Come on, let's head back to our rooms." As the two of them headed to their rooms, Quinn explained everything that had happened on the rooftop. "Wait, what? Then aren't you worried that Loop might tell someone what happened?" "Not really. He has nothing to gain from it. Without any proof, no one would believe him anyway. But there is one problem. There is the chance that if he does find out it's me, then he would come back with the others and attack me. I could take them out one-on-one, but as a group, I don't feel like I could stand a chance." "It's true," Layla replied. "A lot of the students have already formed their own groups and gangs to protect each other. All that's left are the ones that are too weak to be a part of anything." "I know. Why don't you create your own group? I could be like a sub-leader. Of course, we would keep your thing a secret." "That's not a bad idea, especially if in the future we get targeted even more. Maybe I should ask Vorden if he knows anyone." The look on Layla's face suddenly dropped as she heard those words. "That crazy guy, I told you he was bad news, Quinn." "What? Did something happen?" "It's best if you hear it from your friend Peter. Maybe then you will realize how bad it was. After all, he saw the whole thing." In the doctor's office, the 2 students who had been beaten on the roof were currently lying on hospital beds. The single doctor, Haley, was busy as usual, and especially at night, when the guards gathered the beaten students. How can the school just let these sorts of things happen? Surely there is a better way, Haley thought. As she went to check up on Fei, she noticed he was now sleeping calmly, after healing the claw marks on him, and there wasn't anything unusual. However, when she looked at Loop, something had caught her eye that concerned her. In a certain spot on the boy's neck, there were 2 small puncture wounds, similar to those of a snake bite. She had seen these signs before on another student, and just like before, the wound was already starting to heal itself. Haley then tapped her watch and waited a few moments for it to connect. "Hey, General, I believe there might be a stray beast roaming around the school." "What? That's impossible. We have seen no signs indicating the presence of one," the voice on the watch replied. "But there have been some strange signs on 2 students." I'm a little bit worried. Haley said, "Please, for me. Would you just investigate it?" Fine, whatever you want. How can I say no to my daughter?" Just then, though, as Haley got off her call, two military men came rushing in with another student on their backs, soaked in blood. "Hurry, this student is in critical condition," the guards shouted. They quickly placed the student on the bed, and Haley quickly got to work. She tried and tried to use her abilities, but it was useless. The student was already too far gone. He had died. Haley then tapped her wristwatch once again to open up a digital report log. Report confirming the time of death, 9:30 p.m., a first-year student named Brandon Richardson.